Michael Morales Torres para Lucha Libre Online o LLO Plus, o como quieran llamarlo. Y en esta ocasión tengo el privilegio enorme de presentarles a nuestro invitado especial, un hombre muy importante en la industria de Hollywood. Él le llamaron el Accidental Gangster, autor de un libro, y en su momento dado, el jefe de la mafia más grande en la historia de Hollywood. Trabajó con personas como Tina Louise, como Frank Sinatra, como el mismo Ronald Reagan. Todo el mundo que estuvo en Hollywood en un momento dado pasó por sus manos, y hoy tenemos el privilegio de presentarles a nuestro invitado especial de Nueva York para el mundo, pero en directo desde California, autor de The Accidental Gangster. Ori Spado llega aquí por primera vez a Lucha Libre Online. Ori, it is a privilege, it is an absolute honor to have you as our guest. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm fantastic. Thank you very much, Mike. And thank you for having me as a guest today.
Thank you for being here. I see something in your background really interesting, and that has the story of your life. And I'm talking about The Accidental Gangster. We're going to get into your story, but you wrote a book. It is available for our audience on Amazon.com, among many other platforms. But in Amazon, you have it available, including in audiobooks. So that's a great thing. Your fans can get it there all around the world. What inspired you to write a book about your life? We will get into your life, and it's damn interesting. But what inspired you to actually write this book?
Well, you know, all my life, since I was a little child, I've been an avid reader. And while I was in prison, I read over 300 books.
Oh, wow. And
I was walking the yard one day. I mean, I walked it every day. But one day, I don't know why, I said, if I ever wrote a book, not dreaming that I would call it The Accidental Gangster. Because, you know, you're walking, you got nothing to do but think when you're in prison. When I got released from prison, I had dinner with my entertainment attorney, George Ham. And we're sitting at the table. I said, hey, George, these people from Hollywood are calling me to do this and do that. I said, there's so many people that are full of it in this town. I don't trust them. And he looks at me and he says, write a book. I know your story. He said, you write a book and we'll get a movie made. I said, George, I never wrote a book. I said, what do I know? He says, find a co-writer. I thought about it. I started reaching out to everybody I know in Hollywood, but they're all script writers. Writing a script and writing a book are two different things. So one day I just thought about it. I said, how hard could this be? You got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I began. And once I got about 2/3 done, somebody reacquainted me with an old friend who was a writer, and he became the editor of my first book, and he wrote over 20 books. His name was Dennis Griffin. And thus, from there, we got the first publishing company, which was a very big disappointment to me. And I ended up canceling, getting my rights back, and hooked up with Coastal West Publishing out of Canada. And now we are partners in a company we opened up here in Los Angeles. And the book is doing extremely well. And as you can see, it's really a good looking book. And it's over 300 pages. And it's not a book of how to be a gangster. This is a book why you should not be a gangster. You could learn from my positive attitude, successes I've had in legitimate businesses, and so forth. And the book has become a 2-time bestseller. And right now, as I'm sitting here, my phone is George Gallo, who is a famed Hollywood director and writer, is on his way back right now from Mississippi, where he just wrapped up a film project with Morgan Freeman, and my project is the next project that he's going to be doing.
Oh, wow.
So we're beginning, so the movie will be getting made, and we're in the process of casting. And for all you people in the Spanish world, you'll be happy to know that Antonio Banderas is reading for one of the parts.
And those are great news. I mean, Antonio Banderas is really beloved in our Latin American world, man. So that's huge news for us.
Yeah.
Ori, I want to, before you were the accidental gangster or the Hollywood fixer or the leader of the biggest Hollywood mob possibly in the history of the business, I want to go back to where everything began. And I'm talking about the late 40s and early 50s in New York. You were a child back then. What do you recall of your childhood? Who were your parents? How was the place where you grew up? How was growing up on New York, on highly probable one of the most one of the roughest eras ever?
Well, I was born in 1944. We lived in Rome, New York, which is right in the center of New York State. And we lived in a duplex home. I had 2 brothers, 3 sisters. And on the other side of the home was my grandmother, grandfather, and my aunts and uncles. And it was a duplex home. I had a good childhood. We didn't have a lot, especially during the war. We ate a lot of pasta voujau. That's pasta and beans. Okay. And today it's a delicacy, but but my mother, we had a garden. We grew tomatoes, peppers, and different things. My mother canned them. And, I remember helping her. I've been a worker and a hustler all my life. I really had a good childhood. A childhood of, I had great parents, loving parents, great family. I was just a little bit different than the rest of them and so forth, but I was hustling since I've been 12 years old. I mean, I began with a paper route. I cut lawns, I shoveled snow in the winter. I mean, you name it, I was doing it. Ended up joining the Army at the age of 18. And I did my 3 years, served my country proudly. And upon my release, I ended up with the Prudential Insurance Company. And, I had no knowledge, but I was a hustler. And during the daytime, I was going to department stores, talking to the sales clerk, selling them insurance. At night, I'm knocking on doors, talking to husband and wife. And I became a member of the $1 Million Round Table, and I was extremely successful. I was making a lot of money, but I always had a tendency of spending a lot of money. But I was extremely successful, and eventually I began my own insurance agency, and in the credit, life, and accident health field, and the automobile. I was the pioneer in the automobile aftermarket sales, as you know it today. So when you go into a car dealership today, and the person who shows you the car, he's only a demo. He's not a salesperson. He's only demoing the car. Then he'll say, well, you got to see my manager or my business manager or my finance manager. And then they sit you down, they make the deal. They'll sell you the credit, life, and A&A. They'll sell you the paint seal, the interior seal, the warranty, you name it. All right. And I'm the guy that you can blame for that.
Man, you mentioned something really important, and we will get to the insurance part. And that's that you actually served in the army for a while, for 3 years. What, what motivated you to take that decision or that pathway in your life? I mean, you did many things. You were a hustler, as you mentioned, but why joining the army and what you learned there?
Well, in all honesty, I always wanted to be a Marine.
Oh,
Because, as a child, if you read my book, I fought a lot. But, one thing I always been proud of is this country. And my friends all signed up and joined the army. We used to hang around in the pool room. And one night they said, Ori, why don't you come? They already had a date. So my friend Fred, he was only 17 years old. So his parents had to sign the papers for him, giving permission for him to enroll in the army. So he asked me to drive to Utica, New York with him. It was February 20th, something like that, where he had to bring the papers to the recruiter. So I skipped school that day and we drove to Utica. I remember there was snow like you can't believe. I'm sitting in the recruiter's office. I'm laughing, all my friends are leaving. And the recruiter looks at me, he says, why don't you go with your friends? And I looked at him, I saw the snow. I said, well, if you can guarantee me that I don't go to Fort Dix for basic, I want to take it down south someplace. He said, I guarantee it. And I said, if you can guarantee me I get computer training. In those days, it was, computers were bigger than this building. You know what I mean? So it was just beginning, And he says, you got it. He said, but I got to get you to Albany right away to take the test. I'll pick you up tomorrow. I signed the paper. I went home. I had to quit school. My mother went through the roof. I'll never forget that day. My mother would not talk to me.
oh,
My
she was
father
mad.
came home from work. He was upset, but he called my American history teacher, who was a fighter pilot during the war. And he told him that this would probably be the best thing for me. And the next day I was in Albany. And then that evening, after the test, they put us on my first plane ride ever into Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And I can remember we're all in our civilian clothes. It's like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. They're throwing all these papers. One paper comes through. It says, are you interested in airborne? Yes or no? Well, shit, I'm interested in a lot of things. And I was definitely interested in airborne. So I marked yes. Boom. The next day, I find myself being transferred to Fort Gordon, Georgia, where I was in airborne basic training.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I loved it. It was good. It was hard. We had to run every single place we went. The discipline, the integrity, the loyalty that you learn is something that you cannot ever pay for if you had to pay for it. Okay, I could not put a price on it. It's invaluable. And in today's world, I regret that our country does not have a draft. I feel that if we did have the draft, we would not have the high crime rates that we have. And a lot of these young people, instead of being young boys, they would be men. We need more men in this world today. You're over in Puerto Rico, it's a little bit different over there. In this country here in the United States, it's, it's not good. Guys don't dress up, they don't wear sport coats, they don't wear ties. I mean, you know, they're not gentlemen, they're ladies. There's a whole lot of things. I can go on and on. By the way, which October, we are doing a class where we will be teaching young boys to become men. So just stay tuned on that and want to see that on my social media.
I will be definitely looking forward to that. Before you were known as the Hollywood fixer or the accidental gangster, or the biggest person in the mob in Hollywood, you mentioned it before, you were an insurance salesman and you changed your industry as well at that point working there. So why did you decide to enter the insurance business? You could do everything. You could do anything you wanted, but why that particular business?
Well, you know what happened? I went to computer and business machine school. First, I had a job at Revere Copper Barras. I worked in a factory 3 weeks and 3 days. It was horrible. And so then I quit that job and I went to computer business and machine school. And I remember they brought us out in the field. They brought us to a bank to show how they work. And I saw these giant computers. And I'm looking at the people that work. They had suits and ties on. But the way they were working, I said, what? That's no different than working in a factory. You know what I mean? Except they got suits and ties. And I always like dressing up. I always do. And I ended up getting in the insurance business. I went for an ad. I answered it. I got the job. They trained me. And it was just a natural at it, I got to say, because work never bothered me. I'll work, and I still do at 76 years old. I'm going 15 hours a day. I'm up at 4 a.m. in the morning. I'm still doing things. I'm very, very active.
Yeah, so work is definitely your thing. It's something that you're going to die until the day you're not here. You were, that's how you were raised, and it's good to know. While you were in the insurance business, you got affiliated or you met certain people that eventually brought you into the life pathway you decided for you at one point. Who were those people? And I'm talking about the Colombo crime family at that point. How did you got involved with them while working in insurance?
Well, through the years, a very dear friend of mine who was a lawyer, but his father was the boss in upstate New York. Okay. Frank Russo. His father's name was Frank Russo also. And we go to New York. He started introducing me to people. He knew people throughout the country. And slowly but surely, unknowingly to me, I was being groomed. And see, Frank, as a young child, used to open the cellar doors for his father. On Saturday mornings, his father would have a meeting. And my grandfather was one of the guys. So my father came over, my grandfather did, from Calabria, Italy, as a made man. So it was in my family blood, but nobody wanted it for anybody else. But I ended up in it. And unknowingly, but that's how they groom people. They do the same thing for people in gangs, okay? Because it becomes more of a family, another family, all right? And, when I lost my insurance license on my first indictment, being the hustler I had to make money. And they would never give me my license back. So I had to do things, and being a hustler that I am, I created a lot of things to do to make money. And I was successful at it. And through life in New York, I became extremely close friends with the legendary Sonny Franchese, underboss of the Colombo crime family. Out here in California, I was very close friends with Jimmy Cacci, underboss of the Los Angeles crime family. So, here I was, coast to coast, and Jimmy and Sonny, they used to yell at me, "You're with me, you're with me." I always felt I was a renegade. That's what I always felt. I just went where the dollar was. And, but so I became an associate of La Cosa Nostra. I was offered to become a MAID member twice, once in New York, once out here. And somehow I managed to get out of it. I never wanted to become a MAID man. I'm not one of those young guys in Brooklyn whose father was in it and they wanted it and all that. That was never in my head. All my life, even today, what's in my head? How could I solve a problem? And how can I derive money from solving that problem? And I'm still doing that today. Because that's legal. I could fix a problem for you. You got a problem with somebody else. I know how to fix these. I'm good at that. And that's what I actually enjoy doing it. And, I take full responsibility for everything I've done in my life. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And there was a lot of ugly. But I take full responsibility. I went away, I did my time as a man. I did my 5 years. And I turned my life around to help this world become a better place. And if you read in my book, in the epilogue of my book, I ask for everybody to reach out, hold each other's hands, and together we all can make this world a better place. But we have to unite. We have to do that. Also in my book, I say if I help one young man stay out of a life of crime, and it was well worth it. I have helped several throughout the world. People DM me, they get hold of me, and I help them stay out. I advise them to get a college education or find a trade, but do something that they love. In order to be successful, you got to be able to love what you're doing. And always be good to other people. I try to make somebody's day a happy day every day. And so as the LA Tribune says, from accidental gangster to accidental humanitarian. And I feel that everything that I've done in my life was my destiny and brought me to here to doing these good things that I'm doing today.
Well, man, that's amazing. You find yourself back in the day moving to Los Angeles, to Hollywood. You live on your life happily in Rome and New York. You moved to LA, to run your business as a fixer at that point. And you started meeting people. You started meeting people like Ronald Reagan, like Tina Louise, like Frank Sinatra, among many, many other, big names in the industry. Did you ever thought that you would achieve the success you got in that business when you started, or you just started to see, to keep hustling and keep making a living?
Well, I was hustling, making a living, and like so many things just seemed to happen. And how I became a Hollywood fixer was Dino De Laurentiis and Russ Serpi were big producers. They were friends of mine. His office was not far from here, his first office. And there was a problem on the set with an actor giving the director a very difficult time, which was causing the film to go, higher than the budget. And a lot of delays, and they didn't know what to do. And I said, let me go talk to him. I said, I'll handle it. And I went over to the set. I sat down with the actor and explained to him in very nice terms, no gun, but my looks and my voice are a big attribute to me. And I was successful at it, and word just got out, and lawyers, agents, studios, everybody would reach out to me when there was a problem with all sorts. I mean, they were getting even in divorce situations. I would sit down and resolve them. To keep them quiet, keep it out of the press. You don't want negative things in the press. And I did it all quietly, never discussed it with nobody else. Did my job. And nowadays I still do it occasionally because it's something that needs to be done. And I enjoy doing it. I enjoy helping people.
So you helped a lot of people in your career. As mentioned, you started meeting people constantly. What was the name that you never thought you were going to meet in your life? Like a humble kid from Rome who lived literally surrounded by his family, that his mother was not happy that he joined the army, that he was an insurance man, and then move and create his own business. You started meeting people. Like, what was the biggest name that you never thought you were going to meet and actually cross pathways with him or her?
As a child growing up, I can remember when we got our first television set. Okay, you got to remember, not every home had a TV set, and they were not in color, they were in black and white. I could remember watching the Ed Sullivan Show on Sunday evenings. I can remember seeing Frank Sinatra. I can remember seeing Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis. I mean, here I am as a child watching these guys, and they were just starting to get big in those days, but who dreamed that I would ever get to know them, let alone have them become my friends? I mean, and it happened. I mean, it just happened. I mean, number one, as a young child, I always wanted to get out of Rome, New York. It's a very small town. You don't get much of a summer, really. It's a very short summer. Otherwise, you're getting cold and you're getting snow like you can't believe. And, at the age of 13, when I first saw New York City, I mean, I saw those skyscrapers, the cars on the road. That was a big thing to me. And I knew that's what I wanted. I had to get out of Rome, New York. And it was always my dream. And I got out. I did it. I can remember my friend, Tommy Verano told me. We were leaving one day, we were at Club Martin. He said, why are you leaving? And he says, you're a big fish here in a small town. He says, you go to Los Angeles, you're going to be a small fish in a big town. I said, I'm going where the sun shines. Tommy is not here today, but, I became a big fish in a big city.
You became the biggest fish.
Bigger than I thought of in the eyes of a lot of people, and especially in the eyes of the Department of Justice.
But you became the biggest fish in one of the biggest industries. Like, maybe you never thought you were going to make it. Like, everyone has doubts of everyone, but you follow your gut, you follow your instinct, and definitely went for it. You mentioned that you were a fixer. You help people or famous people with their problems. And at one point of your career, unfortunately, you mentioned it earlier, 2008, when you were in Beverly Hills, you were arrested in your home for something that was not basically related to LA, but to New York. And I'm talking about obviously the Colombo crime family at that point. Once you were arrested, that you were in prison, you served 5 years, you mentioned it, and you decided to change your life. You decided not to be that type of person, but you decided to help others to stay out of a crime life. Why did you decide to change your life? I mean, you could just simply go back, get your business again, and started growing it even bigger, but you decided to change everything. Why, Ori?
Well, number one, okay, I always felt the day was going to come that I would be arrested for something.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm not a choir boy. Okay. And I felt it would come. I never dreamed it would come in the way that it did come. But in 1997, a special agent with the FBI here in Los Angeles, he looked at me and he said, I will see the day you are chained, shackled, put on Con Air, and brought to Brooklyn. That was 1997, because I would not become a confidential informant with him. And what I did to those FBI agents, I got one demoted off squad because of what I did. I mean, you know, I was taping the FBI, but I went on record in New York City with it, okay, with the bosses. So they knew what I was doing. When I stopped that, that's when he said it. 1997. In 2008, they made it a reality. On a RICO act, you need 2 predicate acts, and they found them. And they chained and shackled me and put me on Con Air and flew me to Brooklyn, New York, where I stayed for 30 months in a Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, fighting my case. And I was very fortunate and blessed that I only ended up getting 62 months. But here again, I had to do the research. I had to write my own motions. I had to get the judge to know who Ori Spado really was. You follow me? And both my predicate acts took place here in Los Angeles, not in Brooklyn. I'm a resident of California. My peers at a jury would be the people of Los Angeles, not the people in New York. I've been here over 45 years now, okay? So this is my residence. This is my own. And I put a motion to get my case transferred to Los Angeles. And I wrote in a lot of good things in that motion, and the judge actually considered it. And, but that changed the course of things, and it got the judge to know who Ori Spado really was. And I did. So on a robbery charge, he gave me 60 days. On the gun charge, it was a minimum mandatory sentence of 5 years, 60 months. And he went like this. He said, my hands are tied by Congress. These are other things that I want to get changed before I go. Okay? I don't feel that Congress should be telling judges what to sentence people to. All right? That's totally wrong. Number one. Okay? It was an informant that said that I gave the gun to somebody to perform something. That informant never saw me give a gun to anybody. I know that absolutely 1,000,000%. But that's what they had him lie to say. And that became a charge. And it became the minimum mandatory. I really felt that if I had sentencing without that minimum mandatory, the judge would have released me with time served. But his hands were tied. He couldn't do that. So, that there, the RICO law is an illegal and unconstitutional law. And 2 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court declared that the 924C gun charge is illegal and unconstitutional and should be vacated from everybody's record. So everybody who was in prison on that there got released. Everybody else got it vacated, except one person, Ori Spado. The U.S. attorney, when I tried to get it vacated, wanted to bring back the 2 charges they dismissed. Since 2010, they want to bring the charges back. Statute of limitations has run out not once, but almost 3 times. And they wanted to bring me back to court to fight all over again. I was not ready for that fight. So I still have that charge. It has not been vacated, but let them do what they gotta do.
Ori, I'm a lawyer. I'm an attorney in my regular life as well. You mentioned something that not many attorneys can do. You basically help change the system with emotion. You draft it yourself. How do you manage? Like, an attorney could charge thousands of dollars for that, but you decided to put the faith of your trial in your own hands. You did your research, as you mentioned, and change everything. How do you manage to basically went one-on-one, face-to-face with the US government and won a huge battle that way?
Well, you got to remember, I'm from Los Angeles. I'm a Hollywood fixer. I'm also a connector. I know all attorneys out here. If my trial was here, it would have been another trial. I would have had a dream team like O.J. Simpson had. Because these lawyers out here know me, they trust me, okay? And even though they charge a lot of money, they know they're going to get their money eventually from me, even though I didn't have it at that moment. Now here I am in Brooklyn. I don't know any lawyers back there. And I started interviewing lawyers. I would have my kids come up with lawyers' names and set up interviews, and they come there and the guy got to go down to his room. But my first question to the lawyers was, what do you know about the RICO Act? How do we beat it? And I'm going to tell you something. With all these lawyers, with all their high dollar prices, well, very tough. You're not going to beat it. Okay? I went through 4 lawyers. I fired one lawyer right in front of the judge in the courtroom. When they tried to get me to take a plea, they never changed on me. Everybody else they did, but me, no. They wanted to give me 97 to 110 months sentencing. That was the best plea deal that they would offer me. Everybody else, it was 24 months, 36 months. Not me. No, I took it upon my own hands to fight it. I analyzed things. I strategized. One thing being in Brooklyn, there were a lot of other Italians with all the other crime families. Okay, we're all friendly. We all help each other. All right, and everybody's fighting the case. And You know, we go to law library, I find something, I give it to you, you find something, you give it to me. All right, this is what my lawyer, here's a motion, I take a little of that motion, put it in my motion. And, you know, as you know, as a lawyer, if I submit a motion without the judge automatically denies the motion. Okay, unless it's submitted by the lawyer. My first motion was a prosecutorial misconduct motion against the Department of Justice, the FBI in Los Angeles, the FBI in New York, and some informants. That was my first one. And my lawyer out here actually typed that up for me. He was doing it through the mail. No lawyer in Brooklyn would submit that motion. They were afraid. I submitted it. Of course, it got denied. But one thing that I knew was that my judge read everything that went across his desk. He was not, look at it, I met good judges and bad judges in my lifetime. I never met a stupid one, okay? They're very intelligent people. And I was very fortunate with Judge Brian Cogan that I had, who happened to be the same judge in the El Chapo Guzman case, okay? And a very intelligent guy. And in addition, he was not a former prosecutor, which was another good thing. So I started writing my own motions after that there. They get denied. But when I wrote the motion, I remember in court, to have my trial here in Los Angeles. And I'm standing there and he denies the motion. But this is when I got severed. I got very lucky. I got severed from the case because I found information on a tape, on a recording that I wanted to use at trial. And we were having laminin motions. Sonny Franchise, all the other co-defendants there were all sitting there. And Sonny's lawyer puts a motion in to get Sonny severed from the trial. Okay? Because they did not, or they had to throw out the information I wanted to use at trial. And the judge says, Mr. Lynn, there's no way in this lifetime that Mr. Franchise is going to get severed out of this trial. But I read a motion last night, perhaps Mr. Spado should be severed. And he looked at the U.S. attorney and he said, you have until noon tomorrow to convince me why Mr. Spado should not be severed. Court adjourned till noon the next day. Next day, we're back in court. The judge says, Mr. Spado, I have to deny your motion for severance. Well, what I'm going to do, Mr. Spado, if you could explain to the court in legal terms that that information that you want to use at trial can be used for you or against you. He says, I'll consider it. I stood up. I explained it could be inculpatory or exculpatory, that it could be used either way. Okay, I explained it in the legal terms. He said, Mr. Spado, I'm convinced that you are well aware and knowledgeable of this here. What's your decision? I said, because he left it up there. I said, I'll take the severance. And I got severed. That was the luckiest day because now I'm by myself. Okay. If I would have gone to trial with the rest, I'd still be in prison today. No question. I would have died in prison. So that became a change of law. But what the lawyer did, he said, now he looks at my attorney after he severs me, and he said, Miss Kelly, I read Mr. Spado's motion. When are you going to submit a motion? And that was for me to have my trial here in Los Angeles. Okay, that helped me immensely. And so they took me, they put me in the bullpen, you know, the little cell behind the judge's chambers. And I told my lawyer, Kelly, I says, come see me. And she came back and see me. I says, Kelly, you got to write a motion to put it in to get my trial transferred to Los Angeles. I says, you don't write the best motions. I says, so write your motion, but attach my motion to it. Here it is, I'm telling my lawyer what to do. And she did it. We came close. We went. Now here you gotta remember, in my head, I'm gonna come to Los Angeles. I want a new prosecutor. I want a new everything, okay?
You almost got it.
Huh?
You were about to get it.
Now, here's what the judge says. Mr. Spado, I considered long and hard your motion to transfer your trial to Los Angeles. He said, but I want to be the judge on your trial. He said, which means that I got to get a judge in Los Angeles to give me his courtroom for 2 or 3 weeks. He says, the prosecutor here wants to prosecute you, which means we got to pay for the expenses for them to reside and fly to Los Angeles. He says, so therefore, because of the expense and all the time, he says, I'm going to deny that motion, but I guarantee you'll get a good trial here. That's how close I came. But I, at the end of the day, when he said he wanted to be my judge and the prosecutors wanted to be the ones to prosecute me, who are the same prosecutor who just wanted to bring me to trial again. Okay. So it turned out very well. It turned out, 62 months. I already had 30 in. So I only had to do another 30 months. So.
Ori, what's the best advice you've received and what's the worst advice you received in your life, and who gave you each one of those?
The best advice I ever got in my life? Well, a very dear friend of mine, Joe Riccardi, told me a long time ago. The 4 Seasons. He said, Ori, you got to stop. There's no future. You're going to end up in prison. Joe was another guy who many years ago, he did time, he got out, he changed his life. He lives in Arizona. I didn't listen to him. And he was correct. He got me in trouble, got me indicted. What was the best advice I ever got?
Maybe something your parents told you while growing up, for example.
You know, my parents, my mom and dad gave me a lot of great advice. But you know, like most children, we don't realize how smart our parents are until we get older. You know, I was like the renegade child in my family. Still am. But probably the best advice was in the bullpen in Brooklyn, New York, because I still wanted to go to trial and fight my case. And they offered me that deal. I was going to turn it down. And a friend of mine with another crime family, Tico, he says, Spado, take that fucking deal. You don't take that deal, they will shut your lights out. He says, you've been here 30 months. You could see daylight. You don't take that deal, you're going to die in prison. And he was right, because he was offered a deal. He turned it down. He went to trial, and boom. You're not going to beat the RICO charges. My co-defendants, Dino and Tommy, they beat all the predicate acts. They beat all the murder charges, found not guilty of everything. But the jury found them guilty of the RICO. Now you got to remember, you as a lawyer, you know, the judge does not tell the jury how much time somebody can get for a certain charge. So the jury, in their minds, they find you not guilty of what they think is the worst thing, but they find you guilty of RICO, which they think is nothing. But RICO holds up to 20 years on each RICO charge. My friend Dino had 5 RICOs. He could have gotten 100 years. The judge gave him 50. Tommy had 1 RICO. The judge gave him 17 years. I think it's unfair. I think the jurors should know of how much time somebody could possibly get, okay, because of the RICO. You as a lawyer, I don't know if you've ever had any RICO cases, or studied it, but Richard Nixon signed that into law in 1971. His primary reason was not to get rid of organized crime. His primary reason was to stop the drugs in this country. But when he did, by signing that RICO Act, is he gave the U.S. attorneys, the FBI, the ability to lie and get away with it.
Yeah.
And as you know, it did nothing to get rid of drugs in this country.
Ori, before we go to our last question, I wanted to thank you, very much for your time. It's been an honor to have you here. Last but not least, you changed your life. You're writing your book. You wrote your book, you published it, you're going to have a movie. What's next for Ori Spado? You're working 15 hours a day. You're enjoying life. You're enjoying your coffee, your cigarettes. You're living a normal life, a normal, quote unquote, like a regular life, not a crime life. You change everything. What's next for you?
Well, currently, in a couple hours, I got a conference call. For the last several months, I've been helping another gentleman fight a case with the Federal Trade Commission. Here again, the U.S. Supreme Court voted 9-0 that what the FTC has been doing for the past 40 years is illegal and unconstitutional. He got caught up in this. The FTC's been going in. They put a TRO. They freeze all your assets, put you right out of business. They put a receiver in there. But yet it was a congressman out here submitted a bill to give them the same rights back. It was passed in Congress, and now it's at the Senate. We've had several calls with Mitch McConnell's office. We got to block it in the Senate. I've been fighting this case for this gentleman. We just got him a new attorney. He's been screwed by 2 attorneys who were very blessed and fortunate that a lot of people came to his aid and have been putting money up for the legal defense and they put up over $1 million so far, just for legal defense. So my goal is to beat this and turn it around 360 degrees and get him his business back. Because what he did was not illegal or anything. There's no criminal charges. It's just something the FTC's been doing. It's Bill HR 2668. You can look it up and know everything I'm talking about there. I've had thousands of people write their letters to their representatives. I got a massive following on this here. And that's my goal. This is one thing that I'm determined to win. And I feel that we will prevail. You know, as you know, in the legal system, you just gotta, the motions gotta get into the court. They gotta be written properly, because through the motions, that's the only way the judge is really knowing what's really going on. It's the only way the judge gets to know what, you know. The judge didn't know Ori Spado. All he knew was what the U.S. attorney was saying about Ori Spado. And most people, they go to trial, they do this, they leave it to their attorneys. I don't. I want to cross the T's, dot the I's, and let's do it right. You know, that judge has got to know who you are, who you really are, what you're really made of, your character, okay? For example, I analyze the system of how when you have friends and relatives write letters to the judge when you're going to sentencing. The normal process is that everybody writes those letters, sends it to your lawyer, and then your lawyer will take all those letters and give them to the judge. Now the judge has got a pile of letters. He might read one or two. So the way I did it, I called everybody I wanted to write letters, over 50 people. And I would say, Mike, I want you to write a letter. I want you to send it to the judge. Here's his address. I says, and then 3 days later, mail a copy to my lawyer. So now I had it every day. My judge is getting 1 or 2 letters. He read every one of them. And he even remarked that in his sentencing of how it happened. He couldn't understand how it happened. Yeah. Okay.
It was really organized.
Yeah, but I organized that there. And that's the kind of thinking, you know, thank God I got a brain, and, you know, I'm able to strategize and do those things. But, you know, you always got to think about what the other person is thinking, okay? If you're going to be one-sided, you're going to lose. You know, you could always come to a happy medium, but the judge even remarked, how did it happen? Because when my lawyer had all the letters, boom, he gave it to the judge, but he'd already read them.
I don't know how you did it. I mean, you organize it, but one thing is organizing something in your mind, and another thing is seeing it achieving success that way. So that's simply incredible, man. It's amazing. Before we go, obviously, I wanted to thank you very much for your time. What words can you send to all the people out there to inspire them not to choose a life of crime, but to choose a separate pathway to help others and to be, you know, humans, to be a good society, basically?
Well, you know, the first thing that I like for everybody to know, you know, they say in La Cosa Nostra, respect, honor, loyalty. That don't just hold true for La Cosa Nostra. That's got to hold true for all of us. You know, I take a walk every morning, I do my shopping, I'll stop in the store, you know, but I see a clerk, I'll try to make their day happy. Try to make somebody else's day happy, your day become happy. do good, do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. It's very simple. Do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. You live your life according to that there, you'll have a good life.
Man, wise words from Ori Spado. Sarah's mentioned, thanks to Mark for making this possible from Ireland. Shout out to Mark. Huge shout out to Mark. It's been an absolute honor to sit down with you. I mean, the stories you were telling me, it doesn't make, you know, those are the things that you cannot find in the internet. Let's say it that way. You need to go directly to the source. You need to go directly to the person to hear the story. And that's exactly what you did today. So I wanted to thank you from Lucha Libre Online, for myself. Thank you very much for your time. We're always wishing you success in your career, in your personal life, with your family, and with every project you have. And man, it's been an absolute blast to have you as our guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. It was an honor to be with you. And, you know, if you don't mind, I'd like to tell anybody, you know, they can go to my website, www.theaccidentalgangster.com. If you want an autograph book, that's where you can get that there. Otherwise, you can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and several other places. It's available all over. I thank you, everybody. Have a great and blessed day. God bless you. Thank you.
Amen, man. And let's wrap this up in español. This is Ori Spado, the Accidental Gangster, the Hollywood Fixer, y Michael Morales Torres para Lucha Libre Online, la marca número 1 en español.